Hello everyone, back tuning to our latest Star Wars video. So I want to talk about rumours that are circulating within the YouTube Star Wars community and the more wider Star Wars community. Rumours that began with the Nerdrotic YouTube channel. And this is a video that has started off many of the rumours. I'll talk about what Nerdrotic has reported. There has been a follow-up video that's been put out today, again sort of going over the rumours that might explain why Star Wars under Disney has proved to be such an absolute failure and such a disaster, and it all hinges on merchandise. So it's quite complicated, but I'll try to talk you through the rumours and why it seems that merchandise could well be at the root of what's happened with the sequel trilogy and why the sequel trilogy has turned out to be such a creative failure. Financially, the sequel trilogy has been successful. Both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi have made back their money, so financially it's been successful, but creatively it's been a train wreck of a trilogy. We're waiting for The Rise of Skywalker, of course, see how it finishes off the trilogy, but up to this point it's been a total disaster. So I'm going to go over everything for you in a moment. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this theory holds water? You'll hear the theory in a moment. So if you're enjoying the Star Wars content on this channel, then please like, share and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think. I'm going to link to both of these videos from Nerdrotic in the description here at YouTube, so you'll be able to watch these for yourself. Do give them a watch. It really is fascinating. I'm going to try to sum up the theory, but really Nerdrotic is where you should go to see this for yourself. It is sort of incredible, really, but at the same time, if it's true, so much of what has happened makes sense. So this is the first video that Nerdrotic put out. Let's see when it was. It was on the 10th of August. So Nerdrotic was doing a live stream when one of his informers messaged him, and the thing has snowballed from there. Now, what Nerdrotic's informer has told him is that George Lucas owns at least part of the rights to the original characters, to his original characters. So although George Lucas has sold the franchise, he's sold Lucasfilm Limited, and he's sold the rights to Star Wars to Disney, he still owns a stake within the original characters that he's created, and that is both the characters in the original trilogy, so for example Han, Luke and Leia from the original 3 films, and also he still owns a stake to the rights of the prequel trilogy characters. So, for example, Darth Maul, Jar Jar Binks, Anakin Skywalker, Padme Amidala. All of those characters, although he has sold the overall franchise to Disney, he still holds a stake within those characters. So, for example, when a Han Solo Star Wars figure is sold at whatever store you can think of, George Lucas will get a percentage of the revenue of that sale, because he still owns part of the rights to the merchandise of Han Solo. He doesn't own new characters, and he doesn't own any rights to new characters and the new films. So, for example, if a Star Wars figure of Rey, or Finn, or Poe, or BB-8 is sold at a store, any store that you can think of, then George Lucas will not get a percentage of the merchandise rights, will not get a percentage of the sale, if you like. He doesn't own any merchandising rights to those characters that are Disney exclusive characters. And so where we're going with this is that to prevent themselves having to pay checks out to George Lucas for his original characters, Disney has chosen to sideline those original characters, not only to create new characters, which is fair enough, it's a new trilogy of films, but to sideline, character assassinate and destroy the original characters and kill them off. So how many people want to buy Luke Skywalker figures after seeing how miserable he was in The Last Jedi, for example? How many people wanted to buy Han Solo figures after finding out that he was a deadbeat dad in The Force Awakens? So the idea is that Disney has destroyed the original characters, promoted their new characters, and they've done all of this purely so that they don't have to pay George Lucas a percentage fee of the merchandise from those original characters that he still has a stake in. Now, this is all just rumours. Nobody has confirmed this and probably never will, but it does explain a huge amount. So this is the first video, say, that Nerdrotic put out a couple of days ago. He's done a follow-up today. I'm going to link to this in today's follow-up. His informant, and he does rate his informant quite highly, has added a little bit more, and the informant has actually revealed that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were targeted with the express idea of rebooting, in terms of J.J. Abrams' case, rebooting Star Wars in a similar fashion to what he did with Star Trek, so promoting the new characters, sidelining the old characters, and then Rian Johnson, Disney actually gave Rian Johnson the job of destroying and killing off the original characters, which of course he did with great relish in terms of Luke Skywalker. J.J. Abrams killed off Han Solo, of course. So this was all pre-planned by Disney. They knew what they was doing in terms of sidelining these original characters. They knew what they was doing in terms of the character assassination that these characters went through, particularly in terms of Luke Skywalker. The whole thing was planned out from the beginning, and it's purely, again, so that George Lucas does not have to be paid merchandise rights on the original characters that he created. So the analogy is with Star Trek. So this is the original cast of Star Trek. Now the rights, the merchandise rights to the original cast of Star Trek and the original characters within Star Trek, the merchandise rights for that is still owned by CBS. So CBS was the original makers of the original version of Star Trek. So when Paramount rebooted Star Trek back in I think it's 2009, the idea there was, again, J.J. Abrams, a bad robot, his production company, heavily involved in this. The idea was to take those original characters, but so that they don't have to give that merchandise fee to CBS, to take those characters and sort of change them, make them much younger, and that's where the idea of Into the Darkness and the other J.J. Abrams Star Trek films come from. So, as I say, this makes sense when you view the changes that they have made, which are very, very odd and obscure. This is the original image of the Millennium Falcon. That's the original image of the Millennium Falcon back in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It's in the Death Star hangar. This is the Millennium Falcon from The Last Jedi. Now, it all looks very samey, except there is one crucial difference, and that crucial difference I'll just highlight it for you, because actually until I saw Nerdrotic's video, I'd never noticed this, although I've only ever watched The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi a couple of times, once each at the cinema and then once each on DVD, but I really can't stand those films at all, so I've barely watched them. So this is the change, the radar dish here on the Millennium Falcon. Notice that in The Last Jedi, it's also true in The Force Awakens, the radar dish is rectangular, whereas the original radar dish for the Millennium Falcon is circular. Now, we know that the radar dish got knocked off the Millennium Falcon at the end of Return of the Jedi, when Lando and his entourage were flying through the interior of the second Death Star, trying to escape the second Death Star, I think, or maybe it's flying into it to blow the thing up. Anyway, the radar dish got knocked off, but you would have thought they would have replaced that with sort of a like for like in The Force Awakens, but they didn't. They changed it, and it carried on into The Last Jedi with a rectangular radar dish. Now, these changes have possibly been made so that Disney don't have to pay merchandise fees, merchandise revenue to George Lucas based on the sale of the Millennium Falcon, because it is not a like-for-like match to his version of the Millennium Falcon. Another thing that you can see is at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So the Millennium Falcon, which is of course the new Star Wars land that has opened up in I'm not sure if it's Disneyland or Disney World, but it's the new theme park that's opened up, that's been opened up by Disney, that is supposedly Star Wars related, but there's actually a surprising lack of Star Wars characters within Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So you might go to this theme park, the Star Wars rated theme park, and expect to see sort of Darth Vader and C-3PO and all of the iconic characters, Darth Maul, all of them sort of milling around. And actually, there is nothing really there that associates back to the original or to the prequel characters, but they do have the Millennium Falcon. But notice the version of the Millennium Falcon that they've got at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is the sequel trilogy version. It's not the version that we all know so well with the circular radar dish. It is the sequel trilogy version with the rectangular dish. Now, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is proving to be a bit of a disaster. They are currently in the process of laying off people who are working there, so it's quite serious actually for anybody who's got a job working at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Some of the people there are losing their jobs because there just isn't the amount of people going to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge that they was anticipating when they hired the numbers of staff that they've got there. So and that's primarily because they don't have a great deal of classic iconography. They don't have a great deal of classic Star Wars characters at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Say what they have got is primarily focused on the sequel trilogy, which you would expect again because Disney has made the sequel trilogy, but you would expect them to have the iconography of the past films. You would expect them to have characters that are related back to the original and to the prequel films. Another very obscure and bizarre change that was made in the sequels was with C-3PO. So this is the classic view of C-3PO from The Empire Strikes Back. There he is in all of his glory. This is C-3PO from The Force Awakens. And we've got the red arm. Now, nobody ever really explained why C-3PO has that red arm. Why was it needed? Why did they change C-3PO and give him a red arm? I mean, it's a trivial point in a way, but again, if this theory is correct, that Nerdrotic has highlighted, if the theory is correct, then they have done that because, again, on C-3PO merchandise sales, George Lucas would not now get a percentage of C-3PO merchandise because, although it still has C-3PO name, it is not the same character, or the character does not look the same as the version of C-3PO that George Lucas owns, which is, of course, that version. So, could this be true? It seems so incredible to believe that they would go to these lengths purely to not have to pay out merchandise fees to George Lucas. But it does explain a lot. Why have we never had, within any of the Star Wars sequel trilogy films, why have we never had a reunion with the four or big three main characters? We have never on screen had a reunion of Han, Leia, Luke, and Lando Calrissian. We never had a reunion of Han, Luke, and Leia. We only had Han and Leia in The Force Awakens, and one scene, just one solitary scene, between Luke and Leia at the end of The Last Jedi. And again, the theory is that George Lucas owns the rights to all of those characters that you see there. George Lucas owns a percentage. He doesn't own the total rights of them, of course, because he's sold the franchise, but he owns a percentage of the merchandise rights on those 4 characters. And so those 4 characters have been sidelined, they have been character assassinated, they have been killed off by Disney. They charged Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams with this job to do this. They knew what they was doing, they told them to do it, and they have done it so that they don't have to pay merchandise fees, or they don't have to pay minimal merchandise fees to George Lucas on these characters that he owns a percentage of the rights to. Conversely, George Lucas does not own any of the rights to these characters, Rey, Finn, and Poe. Disney owns 100% of the merchandise rights to those characters, so they are the primary focus of the sequel trilogy at the expense of the original characters and at the expense of George Lucas's original stories. So let's just go back to there and sum it all up. So the theory, again, is that they have done this. Disney have done everything that they have done within the sequel trilogy so that they don't have to pay George Lucas a merchandise fee on the characters that he owns a percentage of still, even after the sale of Star Wars and of Lucasfilm to Disney. It explains also what happened with the creative process of The Force Awakens. So when George sold Star Wars and Lucasfilm to Disney, we've gone over this in videos I've done before, when he sold the rights to Star Wars, he sold with them story treatments for the 3 sequel trilogy films, episodes 7, 8 and 9. And particularly in terms of episode 7, we know that George's story was going to involve Han, Luke and Leia a great deal more than was the case with what we eventually got from The Force Awakens. Now, Luke was, at the beginning of episode 7, George's version, on the island in solitary confinement. He'd taken himself away to the island. Not sure what the reason was, but I don't think he was suicidal as we see him in The Last Jedi. But Kira, who is Han and Leia's daughter, goes to the island to be trained by Luke at the beginning of episode 7 and gradually draws him back into the story, draws him back into the adventure. So that the second half of George Lucas's episode 7, we get a reunion with Han, Luke and Leia, and they go on an adventure. Now, I would have thought even in George Lucas's version, Han probably gets killed off at the end, because you would only get Harrison Ford back to Star Wars with if Han dies. Harrison Ford wouldn't come back to Star Wars any other way, I don't think, because he's never been particularly enamoured with Star Wars. He's never been particularly fond of Han Solo. He basically thinks the whole thing's a load of baloney, but he is happy to cash your checks. But anyway, so Harrison would probably only have come back if Han was killed off, even in George's version. But at least in George's version, we do get a reunion of the Big Three. They do get to go on an adventure. They did get to go on an adventure, and of course George sold that story treatment and the following story treatments for 8 and 9 to Disney. And we'll never know what assurances they gave him about the sequel trilogy, but I think it is very, very probable that at the time of the sale, he had a pretty good idea. I mean, put Kathleen Kennedy in charge of Lucasfilm Limited. She was hand-picked by him. So I think at that point, he would have had a pretty strong feeling that they would be going with his story treatments. We know that early on in the creative process of episode 7, which eventually became Force Awakens, George Lucas left Star Wars. He left them to it. walked away from it. Never known the reason why completely, but they discarded his story drafts. Now, if this theory is correct, it explains why they did that. You've got stories, never been able to understand it. Many Star Wars fans haven't either. You have story treatments for episodes 7, 8 and 9 from Mr. Star Wars himself, from George Lucas. He is willing to help you create these films in an overseeing capacity. He's not going to direct them. You can still have J.J. Abrams or whoever directing these films, but he will be there as a guiding light. He'll be there as a guiding hand on the shoulder, if you like. It's a perfect setup. You could have George Lucas's story for the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, sequel trilogy for sequels to Return of the Jedi and The Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope. You could have George Lucas's story with him as a guiding sort of producer in the background, but also with upcoming directors, exciting directors like J.J. Abrams, if you want, or whoever you would like to pick. Why would you then discard that and just do your own thing, which turned out to be vastly inferior in terms of episode 7, because we never got a reunion of the original characters, turned out to be vastly inferior to what would have happened if George Lucas's story had been continued. And the reason, again, it's merchandise fees. It's so that they don't have to pay George Lucas merchandise fees. They can do their own thing. They can sideline George's characters. They can promote their new characters who George Lucas does not own any of the rights to. But would they really go that far to sideline George Lucas and to stop him from having merchandise fees? It seems incredible that they would, but then so much of what has happened now makes sense with this. So it's only rumours, and we'll never know. I would have thought we'll never know one way or another, but it does make so much sense, if you like, with these rumours. So let me know in the comments what you think. Would Disney really go this far? And the upshot is, though, that by going this far, they have actually damaged the very thing that they have brought. So they are not selling the merchandise in anywhere near the numbers that they had always hoped that they would. The shelves, the Star Wars merchandise, Star Wars toys have been taken off the shelves. They're not selling anywhere near the numbers that they thought they would when they brought Star Wars from George Lucas, because the fans will not stand for inferior products. The one thing about Star Wars is that it's always had a good reputation as being a reliable product. The fans won't stand for it. The fans haven't stood for it. They have been unable to capture a new generation of fans. And so apparently Nerdrotic says in his first video that George Lucas told them not to go down this route. He told them, don't do it. Don't sideline the original characters in the way you are going to. They ignored him. And although George isn't picking up as much merchandise fees for his original characters at the moment, it certainly seems like George has had the last laugh, because he's been proved correct. And the creative disaster that we've had with the sequel trilogy has come true. And that's it. So that's the theory. And it seems incredible that Disney will go to those lengths just purely over merchandise fees to George Lucas. But so much makes sense with this, that despite the fact that it does seem literally incredible, I certainly am not discounting the rumour. Have a look at Nerdrotic's videos. I've tried to explain them as best I can, but have a look at Nerdrotic's videos and see what you think to them. Fascinating stuff, but it certainly seems as though, if it's true, George has had the last laugh. Let's put it like that. Right, we'll be back with more Star Wars, very long video, so we'll be back with more Star Wars content very, very soon. Please like, share, subscribe. Do let me know in the comments what you think about this theory. Does it make sense? Does it explain what has happened with the sequel trilogy? I think it kind of does. Let me know what you think, and we'll be back with more Star Wars content very soon. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.